Singapore. A former property agent was sentenced to a mandatory death penalty for trafficking cannabis, with the judge rejecting his claims that the drugs were for research and development. The judgment issued by Judge C. Ki Ong of the Appellate Division on Tuesday, April 2nd, outlined the reasons for the conviction of Seet Pong Jing in one charge of having no less than 4,500 grams of cannabis mixture for trafficking. Seet, formerly a property sales agent with the Hudson Asia, was arrested on June 28, 2018, after Central Narcotics Bureau officers seized 5 blocks of a vegetable matter from his car. The blocks were analyzed and contained no less than 4,509.2 grams of cannabis mixture, referred to by Seet as weed. 2 mobile phones belonging to Seet were also sent for a forensic examination and found to contain sent messages advertising the drug. Seet's defense in the cannabis case. Seet, then 28 years old, claimed trial to charge, I don't know what, they didn't really do that right, went to trial, which carried a charge of a mandatory death penalty. He was legally represented by lawyers from Andre Jacomboy LLC and Sterling Law Corporation. The lawyers argued that their client intended to use the drug for research and development for a business rather than trafficking. They claim that Seet developed a fascination with cannabis, not just for consumption, but also for its cultivation and potential uses of cannabidiol, and an ingredient derived from cannabis. He had consulted several contacts beginning from March 2018 regarding the possibility of starting a cannabis-related business. The defense also relied on the psychiatric report that Seet had been suffering from a drug-induced hypomanic episode, which contributed significantly to his reckless and impulsive behavior at the material time, as he was using the drugs for extraction of the cannabidiol oil as part of his grandiose plans to set up a cannabis business. However, the prosecution contends that the defense was a mere afterthought and inconsistent with other evidence. It also argued that Seet did not fulfill the diagnostic requirement for substance-induced hypomanic disorder. Judge dismisses claims as concocted afterthought. Judge C found that Seet had failed to prove the defense of research and describing it as a concocted afterthought. He referred to Seet's statements to the authorities post-arrest, noting that the absence of any mention of research until the trial phase. The judge also referenced a portion of the statement made by Seet the day of the arrest, where the accused said that the cannabis mixture was meant to help damaged friends who need help and a sense of belonging, and then give them a sense of security. Seet's subsequent statements, including one made a month later detailing his pricing strategy for selling weed, which he said depended on his friend's financial abilities, did not mention research, noted Justice Seet. Despite Seet's effusive claims of enthusiasm about his new research and development business ventures, Seet evidently did not possess the know-how and had no plans to extract cannabidiol from the drug. The judge noted that Seet had believed it was only a matter of time before cannabis was legalized in Singapore. Seet had also been in touch with contacts about business ventures overseas. However, the discussions were very vague and concerned big dreams that would have only be pursued if cannabis were legalized in Singapore. Judge Seet acknowledged that Seet's evidence does suggest that he was a cannabis enthusiast, noting that not only was he an enthusiastic cannabis consumer, but he was keen to explore the prospects of starting a cannabis-related business in Singapore. However, the judge described his plans as vague, nebulous, and ultimately undeveloped. Given the range of scattershot and unfocused ideas that Seet had, and the fact that some of his ideas did not even have anything to do with Singapore, I find it difficult to believe that Seet had any concrete ideas or plans for research and development, including the production and or extraction of cannabidiol in Singapore, that he could work with and was ready to act on, much less specifically in relation to the drugs, he said. Any such ideas or plans only existed in his imagination. Nothing translated beyond mere talk into action. Judge, that's how businesses are started. They start as ideas, then people implement them and speak them into the universe, then take actions to implement them. And that's how businesses are created. That's how our industry was created, really similar to this, with people taking chances and opening cannabis businesses and extracting cannabinoids and all these really vague and nebulous, crazy things that they're talking about here. But I really want to talk about this. This man is 28 years, or he was 28 years old in 2018. So what's that make him now? It was 34. So this man is 34 years old. He is going to be put to death for having 5 bricks of weed. He's going to be put to death for having 5 bricks of weed because he wanted to start a cannabis business in Singapore. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, what we have to say as a community, what we have to boycott, if we have to say we're not spending any money with Singapore, or if we have to say we're not going to buy a product that's made in Singapore, or anything as an industry or as a community. I'm saying it right now, it should happen. Because this man is going to be put to death for having weed, period. That is not cool. That is beyond not cool. This is a tragedy. This is something that needs to stop. I cannot believe in 2024, in the world, we are still putting people to death for cannabis and then doing business with them as an American government. We need to stop that.
Yeah, man, oh man, oh man, this is a sad story, Luke.
Yeah, unfortunately, Singapore is still one of those places like Saudi Arabia, like Iran. There's a handful of places that you absolutely do not want to get caught with cannabis in the world.
Even the UAE, there was someone that got
Dubai.
I mean, a lot of these countries are known for their impractical laws and their extremism.
Singapore executed a man less than a year ago. He was a man of Indian descent who was a Singaporean man. He was 46 years old. They executed him for 2.2 pounds of marijuana. And that was April of last year, less than a year ago. So this is
what do pounds go
unfortunately
for in
just what was that, Jason?
What do pounds go for in Singapore?
They got to be expensive as fuck because you're risking life for it.
That's exactly part of my thought. That's exactly part of my thought. Like, man, like the risk versus reward. I'm not sure if that all equates to be there with that.
Yeah. I wonder if this guy had some insight about law changes coming in Singapore, because that's like you said, quite a risk to take. And you know, his defense is that he was doing R&D for, you know, anticipating legalization in Singapore. So I'm curious what information he was operating on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the bold statement that no one should be even in prison for pot, let alone being killed, should be the start of our conversation here, because this is absolutely insane. But you're right. There are places where they don't hesitate whacking your head off or things that we consider to be, you know, maybe you get some jail time for that.
But the difference is, Dale, the most of those countries that Soham named, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, and we know all why that is, we don't have relationships with them, or we don't do business with them, or we're at least not sitting on the UN table with them. Here, I think with Singapore, not only do we do a ton of business with them, we have travel there, we have Singaporean citizens here. TikTok is owned by a Singaporean citizen.
No. The CEO is
he's
a Singapore.
CEO,
he's the CEO. He's not owner.
You're right, not owner, CEO.
Yeah, it's owned by China.
Well, but the problem, Luke, is that we see this as a major issue, and at the UN, they're still fighting about the 61 convention about whether it should be legal, and there's places where they don't really care. They'll whack people for all kinds of things. So for us, this is like, no, this should never happen, because you and I went to prison for weed. That should never have happened either. You should never kill somebody for this. That should be reserved for people who are violent criminals or not. There's no hope for them. But I don't know that this gets the traction at places where it makes a difference. And that's the frustrating part of all of this.
You know,
I think the one thing is like there might be some hope too, because if you remember maybe 10 years ago, Thailand was in that group of countries that had extremely strict punishment for even the smallest amount of possession of cannabis. And I mean, I was personally shocked when they approved adult use and started opening up dispensaries. But I don't know, for me that's maybe a glimmer of hope. But you're absolutely right. Nobody deserves to die for possession or really anything to do with cannabis.
We have Dr. Mark in the chat, and Dr. Mark is like, if it was cannabidiol he was after, it was probably low THC hemp, right? And that very well could be possibly the case that it was hemp derived, because they don't have that arbitrary 0.3. It's all weed to them in Singapore, regardless of what the percentage base is. But I guess we're going to find out. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.